So we've seen that God's role at the flood was to withdraw his protective presence. Well, if he didn't send the flood, who did? Now we have another piece of the jigsaw of the ancient Hebrew worldview. What they believed at the time was water of itself was inherently dangerous. It wanted to naturally explode. It was dangerous. So if God hides his face and he's holding these waters back under the ground and from the heavens, if he's holding them back and all of a sudden he's not, they'll explode. The ancient Hebrews also believed that these waters were the dwelling places of supernatural, cosmic, powerful, violent beings, monsters that would send floods. And so if you're an ancient Hebrew living back there in Old Testament times, especially at the time of Moses, you were thinking, oh my goodness, the flood came, God stepped back. All these disasters have come upon us because God is not with us. Deuteronomy 31:17. And they say, oh no, the monsters in the sea, the evil powers in the sea. And the New Testament will say this too, but give a special name for this monster in the sea. These monsters in the sea have got this really dangerous water that wants to burst forth, and they send the flood. Easy for me to say. Let's demonstrate it. Let's look at the language in Genesis 7, verse 11, English Standard Version. The water came from two places. On that day, all the fountains of the great deep, all the fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were open. Notice the violent language described connected with water. All the fountains of the great deep burst forth. Something was holding them back from bursting. The waves were wanting to erupt. Remember what Jesus did when he saw waves? Wanting to... Peace, be still. And the waves necessarily, when Jesus said something, they calmed down. Waters on their own are violent in the ancient Hebrew world view. Waters in the Bible are dangerous in the Hebrew world view. They want to burst forth, but God holds them back. And then he withdrew. Peace, be still. That's what God does. And when he's not there, you get waves. You got the idea? That's the ancient Hebrew worldview and the worldview of Jesus' day as well. So you've got the fountains of the great deep burst forth. They were ready to explode. God withdrew his spirit, his presence, his restraining power, and bang, they came out with a flood. And there's more to it than that, but there's animals in there that can cause these tidal waves as well. Look at the language of Genesis 8:2. The fountains of the great deep and the windows of heaven were closed. First they burst, and then they were closed. And the rain from the heavens was restrained. This is the restoration of life to planet Earth. God is restoring life to planet Earth. And what's his role? His role is to restrain and contain these violent waters. They burst forth because God took his hands off. Jesus used his hands, pointed to the water, and the waves went down. When he removes his hands, the waves come up. This is the biblical worldview. But there's more to it even than that. God's role is to restrain. We know that he didn't send the waters because he hid his face. Here, where he's closing them up, he's come back, he's showing his face. The Spirit is coming back. And the text says, and that text actually says that the Spirit of God sent a wind to go over the waters. His presence came back. And the thing calmed down and the waters began to divide, like the book of Genesis talks about the creation story. I could go so much into this. It's not funny, but we just don't have the time to go into too much depth. God's role is to hold back violent waters. He hides his face, they burst. Then when he comes back, he restrains and they're closed. To launch off human life on planet Earth again. God pulls back, these violent waters just erupt. The windows from heaven that he had closed. But it wasn't just that the Hebrews saw water as inherently violent, which it is, they also believed that Rahab and Leviathan lived in the waters and that they made the naturally bursting waters erupt even more. This is part of the ancient Hebrew worldview that if you were an Israelite way back then, 3,500 years ago, you knew that the waters are dangerous, that God was controlling them to protect life. The world gave itself over to violence. God pulled back, and not only did the waters burst forth, Leviathan and Rahab stir up the waters. That's how you would have understood it back then. More next time.